And maybe I'll start that over again. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for being here. Bunch of great minds in this room and people doing all different kinds of stuff. And it's just a pleasure to share this space with everyone. Tomi and I and Andra sort of came together over the past fund and just had, with a finger on the pulse of the realities of working together in a decentralized environment, and submitted a proposal, which is the Cayalyst GPS. We had it in open source because we wanted to create a little bit of a framework, a way for people to work together with each other in this kind of environment. And it has evolved a lot, much due to lots of conversations with different people, to our own experiences, to the natural flux of us all growing together rapidly, and also experiencing the diverse challenges and opportunities that have come about. So our hope today is that we can spend some time just sharing this with this group piecemeal. A lot of thought and adjustments have gone into it, so we'll try to take it as slow and create as much discussion as possible. The value here is that we help you to become aware of it, and that we, as a community, think a little bit about how we might collaborate and use this as both a tool and a GPS, for lack of a better word, for how we might move forward together and solve some of our current problems and plan for the future. So I'll turn it over to Tomi, and then I'll just be here helping to guide the conversation, and look forward to hearing what everyone has to say.
Yeah, so welcome. Today we're gonna talk about the framework itself, the implications and some examples, and then see if we can propose something together for Fund 9. It's pretty interesting progress so far. As Nadia said, it has changed a lot. So basically whatever you say today, we might steal it from you and we might include it in the slides tomorrow. So it might actually end up being part of Cayalyst GPS. And that is actually a good segue into the way we do this, is that it's never ready. It's a concept that keeps evolving, and you guys are part of it now that you're here. So let's start with the framework. So as it was mentioned in the introduction from Natalie, it's a collaborative strategy framework that helps us visualize where we are headed, and how might we get there. It helps people to jump in and building on their own strengths, see how good they contribute the best. It aims for comprehension, for communication, better coordination, and better collaboration. So I'm going to be speaking pretty much for the next 10 minutes or so, so kick back and enjoy. After that, we will stop for discussion, and then we'll have the part 2 after that. So what Cayalyst GPS is, it's a strategic framework to improve these things. It brings everyone on the same page, shows that all of the efforts are part of the same big picture, and it allows structured and methodical development of Cayalyst towards the same shared dream that is yet to be decided. It is not an in-group making decisions behind closed doors. It can align decisions of many groups. So basically we are providing just the frames, and it's been built looking at what's already there. It's not a one-size-fits-all solution, but it can be applied to many, many things. And it's not set and forget strategy. It adapts to changing needs all the time. So before we get started, a little bit about the terminology. So when we talk about identity, we don't like to be talking about vision and mission and difficult things like that. We like to talk about purpose. It's the reason of our existence, and then dream, something that we want to reach in a few years down the line. And then values or principles, something that is already happening, something that we spot in the community, and something that we want to base our actions on. Then when we talk about strategic themes, these are 3 to 5 chosen strategies that take us towards the dream. Then when we talk about perspectives, These are functional perspectives that structure and harmonize the work in different parts of Cayalyst. And this can be coordinated by representatives and their subcircles. We come to those roles and responsibilities later. And the 5 that we have identified are collaboration and engagement, structure and processes, infrastructure and ecosystem, products and services, outreach and impact. And we are not married to these names. Names might change, but the idea is to look at things from different perspectives to have a holistic strategy. Then when we talk about objectives, closest thing to this today is challenges. But we don't talk about challenges, we talk about objectives that can be reached in maybe 1 quarter or 2 quarters or 4 quarters, but they are measurable, they're time bound, and they're achievable outcomes. And how do we get here is when we look at the themes and perspectives together. Then initiatives are basically what makes everything happen. So initiatives can be proposals like today. They can be strategic initiatives from IOG or even from Cardano Foundation or anyway. Or they can be initiatives from the community that don't even need to be proposals, but that can be using, for example, rapid funding mechanisms. Okay, so I mentioned the first exercise that should happen is the identity, because this is based, everything is based on this. And it's the why, the how, the what. Someone might recognize the golden circle from Simon Sinek. So you start with why and then only how and what. And there's an important point here that whoever is part of this journey is probably pretty damn excited at the end of it because they were able to be part of something so big and something so meaningful. So it's being part of this is as important as the destination. Just a few words about decentralized structure. I omitted a bunch of slides from here because I don't want to bore you with details, but basically we've looked at the structure from different perspectives and focused on the decentralized element. So what are the benefits of decentralized structure? It lets the strategic leaders of the organization focus on the long term and be those strategic leaders that they need to be. It takes some of the operational burden out of the backs. Then it empowers members on all levels of the organization to take the lead, and it can lead to quick and efficient decision making, to be more agile, and it helps expanding the organization quickly. I think, was it Chris who mentioned that we are in 91 countries or something, so half the world to go. So decentralized structure enhances responsiveness in case of emergency. So if one leader hurts his knee, then next one can take his place because power is decentralized. And it can identify strategic leadership potential. So mind you, when I'm talking about leadership, I'm not talking about position, I'm talking about leadership as responsibility. Now, if we look at these perspectives, we can look at them from internal side or external. So first one is the decentralized leadership. Second one, decentralized governance. Third one, decentralized blockchain. Fourth one, decentralized value creation. And finally, decentralized marketing. And as you can see, this is a loop. So when you do the marketing, when you tell about things to the world, you probably get more leaders into the organization, and so it goes. So what would this mean for Cayalyst? If we had same functional structure everywhere, covering all these core functions, then it would be very easy for people to talk the same language. So regardless of the level of the project or initiative or team or whatnot, if they all considered these 5 perspectives in their work, it doesn't mean that every team anywhere should have these 5 people that you are responsible for collaboration and engagement, but it can be 3 people taking care of this, or it can be 8 people or whatever, but the team itself should consider these so that they can then collaborate better with others and so that they take a holistic approach into what they do. So if you look at what these are, so in normal like organizations or companies, they usually talk about HR or HR&D. Some, like my own company, they talk about people and culture. So we talk about collaboration and engagement because that is kind of the outcome, what we want to reach with this. Mind you, all of this is talked with George, who is currently working with the funding categories, and I'm sure that he will be talking today also. So we try to keep this somewhat aligned with him so that whatever comes out of the funding categories discussion will then be aligned with this model as well. The second one is the admin, legal, and finance perspective, the structure and processes. Third one is research and development in normal companies, but here infrastructure and ecosystem. And this production or delivery is production services. And then sales and marketing is outreach and impact. So basically, this functional structure gives the same language, but then when we have same process everywhere, then we know pretty much what comes out of it. And then these customer perspective and the user perspective can be sensed in a decentralized manner by the proposers and champions of these initiatives. So this is something unique. This is not what happens in normal companies. You don't just give out loads of money every quarter and see what happens. That's very, very unique. And if we do this properly, then we don't have this weird us versus them mentality. We are all on the same page. Anyone who has initiatives can use the same model to go forward. So the other way of looking at these decentralized leadership, what do we mean with it? Collaboration, engagement. How might we work together so that we learn and have fun while we reach our goals? This tries to be very down-to-earth way to say, what do we mean by this? Second one, structure and processes. How might we enable participation in open and transparent decision-making? How can people take part? The infrastructure and ecosystem. How might we help the users and developers to have the best possible experience? Then products and services. How might we help fund the most relevant solutions that are needed in society? And outreach and impact. How might we tell the world about us and invite more people to join the fund? If we take a look at these a little bit closer, mind you, I have stuff on my screen because I'm a host, so I need to move this around. So the collaboration engagement perspective, here you could have full-time contributors. You could talk about vision, values, and culture, DEI, recruitment and onboarding, education, competence development, workshops, courses, training materials, leadership development, all sorts of tools that you need for teamwork, innovation, communication, collaboration. So this is the people and culture part. Then the second one, structure and processes. Here it's important that there is tools for strategy follow-up, decision-making, voting, governance, identity, reputation, rewards, incentives, knowledge management, legal services, rapid funding, auditing, oversight, reporting, open data, process automation, these kind of things. Third, this entails all the developer relations, stake pool operations, dev tools, libraries, SDKs, integrations, R&D, standards, interoperability, and so on. Then this person services, this would have all the business solutions like CRMs, ERPs, whatnot, other acronyms, the industry-specific services for different industries, nation-building dApps, social and environmental solutions, meaning RealFi, then DeFi, payments, all the metaverse related things, entertainment, gaming, arts, NFT use cases, tokenized assets, marketplaces, launchpads, social media things, and so on. And Niels, for example, mentioned in the chat before this breakout room that we need better UI. So that would fall pretty much here. If we had people who are focused on products and services, then we would have people who know Scrum, who knows Agile, who knows service design, who knows UX, UI, and then those people could help all the projects to become better. And then finally, outreach and impact, brand recognition, promotion, partnerships, networking, events, hackathons, demos, campaigns, our baby cross-chain collaboration, then all the media related things, influencer marketing, community hubs, geographic reach, multilingual resources, impact measurement, SDG tracking, government outreach and engagement, advocacy groups, different topical groups, communities, and proposer outreach. Strategic themes, closest thing that we have to that at the moment is the fund goals, but it's by no means perfect. It's kind of towards that direction, but we should talk about what these strategic themes are that take us towards the dream once the dream has been set. And then if you put it all in one image, you could see that on the left side, you have these themes so far not set. On the right side, you have the dream so far not set. And then you look at these themes from through the looking glass of these different 5 perspectives, and you end up having a bunch of objectives, maybe 10 to 20 of them at once. And then those objectives bring more focus, like challenges bring at the moment, but they also bring a bit more structure to what we do. And everything is based on the values and purpose. I will not go through all these outcomes. We will, or the slides are actually linked to the proposal in IdeaScale, and we will be sharing those links. Hopefully someone will put it in the chat. But basically there's a lot of good outcomes that can come out of this. Maybe Nadia, you want to say a few words about what you think is the best benefit of doing something like this. And then we open the discussion.
Sorry, I was just reposting the slides there. Yeah, so one of the values here is there is an accomplishment of some continuity and also flexibility, so that we can be responsive to the needs of our ecosystem over time, but also we have some cohesion fund to fund. There's the ability to be able to anticipate, but also adapt easily. And I think that's very important. It's one of the things that is enabling, that enables some to continue over time, and others have disruption to the work that they're doing. So it also gives us the ability to be somewhat on the same page and familiar with things fund to fund. There's a lot of relearning that happens consistently, or new learning that happens for a community when everything changes pretty dramatically or has the opportunity to. So these are some of the things we're thinking to solve for, and also to be able to let ourselves be as real time as possible with considering the challenges we're facing.
All right, let's open the discussion. Any comments at this point? Any questions, any doubts, any worries?
How we're thinking about going through this is presenting somewhat, and then getting a good talk about it, and then presenting a little more, and then a little talk, and then sort of in thirds. So we'll make this space to be able to get into a little bit.
I have to applaud the work that you guys have put into this. The strategic thinking is absolutely phenomenal, and the amount of hours that you must have in, just besides the thought process, but the design is awesome, and I applaud it. Is this a parallel to the other project that's trying to contain or categorize fund challenges? Would be my question.
Yeah, George, are you here? Do you want to comment?
We've been kind of going back and forth on that, talking about this. So obviously there's the work I've done that's been looking at the properties of categorization that looked at the benefits of having broad, inclusive and recurring categorization. And then we're seeing how that kind of gels with Cayalyst GPS and the exact intentions of it, because Cayalyst GPS can help with things that are very internal to do with Cayalyst and how it functions, how it's a strategy, but it also links very heavily towards kind of what's going on with the categorization as well. So I guess it's a story that's not ended yet. I'd rather kind of sit back and just listen here rather than speak, because I've obviously done a lot of sharing stuff with categories. So I'll take a passive seat for this one mostly.
Yeah, there was someone, Randall was asking in the chat, is this a challenge setting proposal? No, this is a funded proposal from Fund 8. And what we set out to do was to set the basics in place, generate interest in the community, and create the first tools and frameworks to start going into this direction. And then what comes out of this, hopefully already tonight, are some people who get this, aha, I could do this, aha, I could do that, and start forming teams around some of these ideas and start taking things forward with the GPS mindset, and we can help in that progress. But the point is not to have Nadia, Tomi and Ondra to drive this, but the point is to give this to the community, and the community can decide what to do with it.
I'll just comment that kind of fundamental to this is like we want to have as close alignment because with what George is doing as possible. So we've been in conversation a good amount to make sure that we get all the best of what we're doing and we learn from each other's thinking. Harris.
Yeah, no, I definitely applaud the effort. It's such great organization. I think it's a tremendous framework that can really lead us down a good path. Moving into decentralization, it's great that the community is deciding all the directions to sort of go and sort of organizing that and giving folks a place to sort of organize in categories or to work on specific things and have categories that could reoccur. I think it's really a tremendous, going to be a tremendous value for Cayalyst to help us organize, not only going wide, but also having the ability to go deep in specific categories and topics. Certainly coming out of consensus, we had a really great dialogue with many folks, and certainly IO has the desire to really help the development side of things as much as possible. And how do we put emphasis on that in the right way without being directive? How do we make it suggestive and so that it really brings people together in that way? And then seeing that effort fund over fund too, is certainly something that I think the community needs to solve for. And I think this framework is a tremendous place to start, and great to have that GPS. Certainly something that I love the name, and it's certainly something easy to drive towards, and I think it's a framework we all can be a part of, which is awesome. So thank you for the initiative, Tomi, Nadia, and everyone else who was involved in pulling this together.
Thanks, Harris. I'm almost crying. But I think where IoG can have the biggest impact here is to help set the identity and then help set the strategic themes that take us towards the dream, because we need to be aligned. We need the community to be fully aligned with what IoG is doing, because you guys started it all and we need to grab the baton at some point and run with it. So once the framework is set and once the common agreements are done, then it's easier to pass the heavy weight of power to the community. Matthias.
Yes, hi all. So what really struck me is that this framework, it has the ability to create some sort of structure, and structure means efficiency. So that would enable us to drive changes in the system faster. So in other words, it would enable us to create a governance structure faster. So I think it's really good evolution.
Thank you. I don't need to be assigning people to speak, so whoever is next, Steve, just go.
Yeah, Harris' comments brought up a question in my mind, and I've had that. I was actually in a conversation recently when we were talking about something that had been funded in Cayalyst to improve Cayalyst, and that question is how do those types of projects that have been funded by Cayalyst to improve Cayalyst actually get integrated? You know, particularly with this is a pretty large idea, and I really appreciate Tomi and Nadia, and I don't know how to say your partner's name. You know, how do we integrate something kind of like on this scale of thinking into Cayalyst? You know, as literally part of this structure.
Yeah, that's $1 million question, or $16 million question every quarter.
I'll take 500. I'll take 500 right now.
All right. But yeah, if you do have a solution, just go ahead and propose it. So here, the structure and processes perspective is probably what is mostly about the internal things that you want to put in place, that you want to improve, that you want to keep improving. And I envision that there's a bunch of people who are focused on that and that only, and then they can help other people to bring out their ideas to keep improving those structures and processes.
I mean, maybe if I could just pick up on that, Tomi, and you know, maybe try to answer Steve's question a bit more directly. Listen, if there's a great idea and it should happen, there's not really that much in terms of a barrier to making it happen, right? Like there is a management team in place currently in order to make sure that we keep the wheels on Cayalyst and they don't fall off, right? And if there's a better way of doing something, then please don't think that we're here to block it from happening. So that's one sort of point. Second of all, really do applaud you guys for all this work. Obviously, I saw an early version of this deck a bunch of time ago, and it's certainly moved on since then. But you know, actually, the essence of it persists, right? The idea is still there. How you've sort of arrived on sort of categorization and classification, hopefully with George and others that participate and care about this stuff, it can become even more ironed out. Where I think we need to be conscious, and when I say we, what I mean by that is we as a Cayalyst community here and now, is that, yeah, we're certainly a community, but we might not be fully representative of all the people that participate in this, right? So, we have people that don't show up to Zoom. We have the engineers in both IO and also other sorts of contracting organizations that are helping to push forward the protocol. And, there are definitely perspectives that we should, as a community, be reaching out to try and get their input, right? And that's something that I recognize a little bit. We might not, and I say the real we as a community, fully really appreciate some of those priorities that are under the hood net today, coming from the engineering teams, and maybe there's a really good opportunity with a structure like this, because I see like that infrastructure pillar, right? Or that sort of ecosystem infrastructure and tooling, those sorts of areas. If there's persistency, if we're able to kind of have something that is able to persist over time from fund to fund, then it makes that job of trying to identify really where those priorities need to be housed, right? I think we can all recognize that within Cayalyst, over maybe the last 4, 5, maybe 6 rounds, there's a lot of creativity. There's a lot of great ideas for putting forward challenges, but there's a real risk that one great idea doesn't get to persist between funds. And that's something that we really need to address. It's so important. And I think this is towards being able to create the right structures and the conditions for those sorts of ideas to persist. So yeah, I applaud everybody's work that's involved in these sorts of efforts, to sort of look at things at the systems level and take that bird's eye view, and then be able to dive down into some of the minutiae. Yeah, that's about all I want to say for time being.
Yeah, there's so many things. Thank you so much. I fully agree with everything you said. And there's so many things that I could comment, and it might take a day. So I'll try to be very concise. First of all, where is this coming from? So personally, I've only condensed about 20 years of my experience into this only, but it actually starts from the 1970s when balanced scorecard was first envisioned, and strategy maps a bit later. So it comes from the business world, but it has been applied into mission-driven organizations, non-profit organizations, and this is specifically made for Cayalyst. So if we would take some other organization, those 5 or 4 perspectives might be slightly different, but the idea is that you look at both the internal perspectives and the external perspectives, and you see how it builds this flywheel of success. What you said about appreciating people who are not here today, yes, definitely. There's so many tangents that could go to, like, first is the global reach, because we need to be everywhere. So if we have something like this and hopefully even translate it to different languages, then we can bring people to the same table and we can collaborate across cultural and language barriers more easily. The other one is bringing the brightest minds of the community to be really the inspiring leaders that they can be, and they don't have to be like outgoing and expressive people, but they can be nerds in the dungeon who do something like really well. But if they have a structure like this, they can show that, okay, I think this should be direction. I think this should be the focus. And when they do that with the framework that's common for everyone, even those people who would normally not understand anything about what they're saying, can see that it's part of the same big picture, that we're all in the same boat. And I can already see that happening tonight, that we are starting to think very much along the same lines. So this is super cool. Nin.
Hey guys. So actually, first time when I looked over Cayalyst GPS, I thought, why would we build a GPS system for Cayalyst? Are we doing like a navigation to go to the Cayalyst headquarters or something like that? And there was actually a different proposal, something with GPS, something Sunbeam, something. So I'm like, okay, there's 2 of them now. But jokes set aside, I want to read something from Charles, because now that I met Tomi, I think you were presenting in the Cardano Women breakout room after town hall, right? And I joined, like, wow, this is not like GPS at all. It's actually about a framework for collaboration, and collaboration is something that's extremely important, especially in Cayalyst, because we're such a huge community, decentralized community. I always try, because I truly believe together we can accomplish much more than individually, even as companies, right? I want to read something from Charles that he said after going to consensus, right? It's a collective effort of the masses that matters. That's who we are. Cardano did not get, nor did Ethereum or Bitcoin, to where it's at by tireless work of an individual. It got there because of a large group of people who decided it's fundamentally a good idea to choose freedom and liberty. And thus, we must remember that lesson. We must consider that lesson, and we must take it to heart. We have to find a way to make what we do as accessible and inviting as any other endeavor, and more so, if possible. So I'm looking forward to this. You know, it's a huge endeavor, right? But we do have a lot of really smart people in this room. You know, I personally would love to help. For me, one thing you mentioned in the presentation today, which was, you know, instead of competing, we collaborate, right? What if we had, for each category, you guys had onboarding, recruiting, technical stuff, finance, we had resource in the community from people that, whether they got funded or not, just have time or resources to give back, right? For funded proposals or people who are just trying to write proposals to, I don't know, hire devs, get their taxes in order, how to get their smart contracts audited, or just have feedback on like this, right? How to maybe run an after town hall, how to best give updates on their progress to the community in a way that makes more sense, not just, hey, join our Discord and there we're gonna, you know, post an update once a month.
Yeah, we're actually we're getting into those implications and examples soon, and I think it was more than a year ago that George actually started this project to bring the community more visible and show that what can people do. It never picked up then, but maybe we can bring it back once Alison is done with her DIDs. Segue.
Thank you. It's hard to follow those inspirational words from Nin and Charles, of course, with a very practical question. But I wanted to go back to what you had said, Chris. Thank you for your comments about the ability to change Cayalyst with good ideas and the need to reach out to engineers and other perspectives that aren't here. So from a practical perspective, how do we do that? What's the first step? What does the process look like? How, you know, what from IOG specifically, how does the community interact with IOG to bring this about at a tactical level?
I mean, in terms of bringing something like GPS to Cayalyst, right, or creating some structures, I think, you know, today's the first, you know, public unveiling, right? So we should ruminate on this a little bit for sure. We do have Circle, which is meant to be a human problem sensor array, right? And, you know, we don't have decision-making powers in the Circle today, but that's not to say that tomorrow they can't vote on something. And we were talking about parameters within Cayalyst, or a subset of as being maybe some of those first decision points as a pilot. Maybe before we even get to that, we think about how we want to structure Cayalyst in terms of where challenges need to sit. Do they need to sit in buckets such as the ones that we've just been discussing over the last 45 minutes? In terms of how do we engage with the engineers and the community of builders, so there's a technical, there are technical Discord servers there where a lot of the engineers live. There are, there's always an open door into the Cayalyst team, right? And if there's sort of specific inputs that we need to try and get from other teammates, then we can try to do so. But there are a number of, as I said, technical channels where, you know, if you make yourself heard, right, we shouldn't be spamming those channels, but, you know, we can make some concerted efforts to go and canvas for inputs and opinions, right? Yeah, so, and also those that are actually building applications, right, that aren't the core engineers, there are tons of them. We've funded hundreds. Maybe we need to think about how we communicate with those people and teams, whether it's in surveys or something to get input and alpha from.
Yeah, thank you. And I have to admit, I was asking partly from a very self-centered perspective, thinking about the proposal that I'm working on with bringing decentralized identity to Cayalyst. But I'll follow. I won't take any more GPS time on that. I'll follow up offline. Thank you.
But you are GPS, you are in the structure and processes. And maybe there's someone in the impact and reach out who would reach out to those people in the murky Discord servers and bring them in, and then they would come to the decentralized leadership and the people and culture category. So then that's how you see it working, that we are actually doing all these things already. We just now have a framework to talk about it. Sean, can you hold your question? Because we are a little bit behind schedule, because you guys are awesome and you talk too much and I talk too much. I'll go to the second part, because now it starts getting a bit controversial, because we throw out ideas how it could look like. We're not saying that it should be like this, but we're showing some examples. Nadia, what did we agree? Do you want to talk through that, or do you want me to talk through them?
I think you're on a roll.
Okay. Here we go. Implications and exemples. Does it work? Yeah. So first of all, who the heck is going to make this happen? So we try to look at, like, what does it need? Like, what kind of people are needed to do this? And we realized that we pretty much have those people already, but we just don't call them this. And if we talk about circle reps, we don't necessarily need to have just one circle, but maybe we can have many circles. And we've been talking about sub-circles, so maybe there can be 5 of those sub-circles and one main circle, and then we have suddenly 30 circle reps. So you see that the leadership is already becoming more and more decentralized here. And of course, when you look at the time focus, like, was it Len or someone who saw that first time was like, oh no, I don't want representatives to be there for 1 to 3 years. Like, no, that's not what we mean. We mean that these people need to think 1 to 3 years ahead. That has to be the time focus. Whereas on the other end of the spectrum, we need champions who put things into practice, who do the shit and make action happen. And their time focus should only be 1 to 6 months, maybe. So here's an outline of representatives, stewards, champions, or whatever we want to call them. We can call them froggies, koala bears, and kittens. I don't care. But as long as we have the same terminology, and a couple of pom-poms here and there to keep it lighthearted, we can move forward with a structure that invites leadership. And the idea of inviting leadership is that you don't become a leader and stay leader forever, but you become a leader for the duration of time as necessary. Sometimes it might be 5 years, sometimes it might be 5 days. So when we looked at what could this mean from the subcircles perspectives, we realized that we could have a decentralized leadership subcircle, and decentralized governance subcircle, and decentralized blockchain subcircle, and decentralized value creation and marketing subcircle. Maybe we don't want to call them subcircles at all. I don't care. Let's call them whatever. But the idea is that these same perspectives would then carry over to the structure. So here you see that we have a certain strategy and the structure follows that. And on the other hand, we have a certain structure, and through that structure, we birth a certain kind of strategy. So it goes hand in hand. So the role of these functional subcircles would be that they focus on the issues close to their functional expertise, and they can speak the same language with each other, and they can speak the same language with anyone in the organization who is interested in this particular functional area. So this would bring stability, but it would also bring agility, because you could quickly change lanes and change focus and all that, but you would still have people focusing on certain functional area at all times. So it would bring long-term orientation and sensing where the upcoming focus should be. And when you think of upcoming focus, you easily think of challenge setting, and we'll come back to that soon. So the responsibilities would be to listen to the community, introduce objectives for the following funds for the community to vote on, track the existing objectives and communicate progress, help proposers submit relevant proposals and create connections, assist PAs in assessing the proposal impact. If someone doesn't know what PA is, don't worry, I don't know either. We just got them. It's proposal assessors. And we've been using the term community advisors before, but now that we have crystallized that what they have actually been doing is just proposal assessing, we can rethink what that community advising could entail. And as you can see, it can be so many other things. So here, if you combine this sub-circle idea with the town halls idea, you can see that, okay, maybe we could have the geographic perspective in the same. Maybe we should have the global perspective and the functional perspective on the same page. And if all of these different people around the world have the same idea, then things become a little bit easier to maintain and to develop. So basically that communication, comprehension, coordination becomes easier. So what does this main circle then do? Maybe, remember, it's just an example. It ensures global reach and quality of collaboration. I feel like I'm talking too much. Nadia, can you take it?
Yeah, so again, just a continuation of thinking here, but the circle itself then, and this is something we talked about a lot in the group, so this is very open for discussion and feedback here in this group as well. But this circle then, the circle itself would facilitate this cross-functional collaboration. So purpose there is more so to help each of these groups be able to think about how they're working together and to consider the full picture of how the subcircles are interoperating with each other. And that would allow for a broader strategic direction that would take into account each of these groups as they're aligned. And then, so they would need to understand the issues brought up by the trustees. They would still manage a lot of the communication solutions in the town halls and help to keep the vision together and communicate the overall process of the strategy globally. And then still be this bridge to IOG for things that are ongoing and need that level of collaboration. And then help to advise subcircles on strategy execution, which is a big piece here because they are more of a more neutral body in terms of the functions of the subcircles. They're more able to be like a connector and a body that helps each of those other bodies to work together more effectively. And then certainly they could have other roles as well, other things assigned to them as well.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So how would the voting and funding be done in this kind of model? So this now goes to the funding categories discussion more, and we pretty much said, let George handle it because he's been thinking about it for 6 months, so he has the best grasp of how it should be done. But he has some ideas. So the funding is divided into categories, and these categories are aligned with perspectives defined in GPS. The community would set these objectives for each funding category, or even outside of the categories. They would pick primary and secondary objectives their proposal contributes to, and then these assessors would judge the impact part of the proposals based on how well the proposals meet the selected objectives. Then the voters up or down vote the proposals directly or through DREPs in the future. So then this funding would be allocated pretty much the same way as today, just not based on funding categories. Sorry, just not based on challenges, but on funding categories. Whether it should be predefined budget per funding category and that adjusted fund to fund, or whether we could just have some like million ADA per category minimum, and then the rest of the proposals just based on whatever gets most votes. We don't really have answers for that, but that's one of the possibilities. So in this objective setting, the community members could suggest these objectives at any time, and they could join the functional subcircles to make them more pronounced, more holistic, more ready kind of objectives. The subcircles could draft the objectives and post them for the community to see. The community members could upvote the objectives they like the most, for example, using D-work. And then 2 to 4 per each functional perspective would be selected by the representatives for the next fund. Or we could just vote for them. And you see here a bunch of objectives. So this could be like a selection of the first type of objectives suggested by the community. And then what the subcircles and circle would do, they would maybe combine some of them, maybe improve some of them, and they would get readier and more uniform objectives after that. Some of the objectives might not be relevant, so they might be dropped, and some of them might be discontinued, like engaging sailors in the Nashville area. So some of these may carry over from the previous fund. It might be that an objective is never reached or completed in one fund, but it needs 2, 3, 4 funds to really complete. But that is completely up to us. How do we want to do that, and how do we enable the community to decide when and how are they changed and renewed and new ones introduced. But the idea here would be that it would replace the challenge setting. They don't have budget assigned to them. Proposals are asked which category the proposal belongs to and which objectives they address. And then the PAs would assess and rate accordingly, as mentioned. So to bring all this together, previously, if we had challenges, they were highly variable from fund to fund. Example, challenge name could be community hubs here. The KPIs are set by the challenge author or the challenge team, and they vary a lot. They can be interpreted in different ways by different people, and some things might be even a bit incorrect. So that makes it pretty difficult to compare one challenge to another. So this would be replaced by perspectives and objectives. So the perspectives would be consistent fund to fund. And here comes the million-dollar question: where is MISC challenge? So MISC challenge would cease to exist. I'm sorry, but MISC could be everywhere. So any perspective could welcome any proposal. They are not tied to these objectives only. So if there's someone who says that, okay, screw your objectives, I have a really cool proposal and I want to make it happen, and this is the reasoning why I do that. If the PAs think that there's legs for this idea, then it might get funded even outside of the objectives. But the idea of the objectives is that it brings focus on a short term. Also, the objectives can be more uniform, measurable, and polished. So instead of community hubs, it might be secure local presence, and it would have measurable KPIs, targets, all of those things. Example objective could be this. There is title, there's description, there's measures, there's targets, and then we could actually keep track of how much of these measures we have achieved already, and if it's still relevant to keep this as a focus area. And then different initiatives with their champions would be contributing to this. Same way, the initiative would have a name, description, KPIs, targets, and which objectives it contributes to, what the budget is, what the team is, all that. Okay, let's talk about this, and finally we will come back to part 3, where we talk about what could we propose together.
I'll just add to that. There are some questions in the chat. It's like, is this mean this? Is this the same thing as this? And what it really is a little bit of a an expectable category. We have expectable perspectives here, which we looked at on that slide with the columns. And then within that, we're making the objectives based on what the needs are at that time. So those can vary. So neither of those is challenges necessarily, because the challenge right now is sort of both of those things. Whereas if we had anticipatable, I don't know if that's a word, but if we had these categories, and then we're able to sort of steer what's most important at the time, so that is a big consideration of the proposals, then we're able to shift and be agile within the fund-to-fund needs across time. And people will be able to focus on the things that are being evaluated and chosen as the greater value adds at the time of the fund. Lots of hands up. Go ahead, Nori, and then on and on.
All right, thanks. I just want to echo what other people said. I really love this initiative and all the work that's gone into it, and the high level strategic thinking and everything. That's super great. I love all this. And I just wanted to split this into 2 pieces, and I'll talk to the first piece, but it looks like you're talking about subcircles and stuff in the first slides, and then challenge categories or proposal format in the second half. So I'll leave the proposal stuff to the side for now, because I really think that's super great, and having some kind of continuity makes sense, and having some kind of group decision on that kind of stuff is cool. I just wanted to comment a little bit on the subcircle stuff. There's a quote I read recently in this book called Thinking by Design, and in there it said, all of us are smarter than any one of us. So it really talks about kind of the collective mind, and everything is really like way more powerful than any one of us can decide. And so I was just looking at the slides you had where it was splitting up subcircles into categories or town halls or geographically and stuff. And it really made me think about our swarm conversation on Saturday, where we talked about, I talked about pushing the actions, decision-making, and governance as far to the edges as possible, and to truly decentralize this. And what that means for me is that, why don't we let communities form and decide that they are a community, whether through some proof of activity, proof of organization, or proof of community, to say, we're a community, we want representation. And then you don't know what magic is going to happen there. It could be a group of underfunded, struggling SPOs, or it could be some NFT artists or whatever. We don't know which parts of the ecosystem are going to organize and be that community that really wants a voice. And when you do that, one of your slides said the responsibilities of the circle is to listen to the community. But if you turn that on its head, and communities self-organize and form, then the community is already there. There's nothing to listen to. They're just given a voice. So you totally get rid of that requirement. The community just now needs to pick amongst themselves who's going to be their representative to speak to them, so that we don't have a situation where, like, you have this hypothetical community and then somebody's tapped to represent them and then they struggle like, well, where are they and who are they? And it's very clear that there's no alignment with that community if that struggle happens. So why not allow communities to just form and send somebody in? So decentralize the circles themselves. Don't set up any categories or anything. Maybe it's just some kind of proof of community criteria that says if you get 50 names in a petition or you have proof of organization and meetings and standards for joining, then you're in, or something like that. And then let circles decide which other circles they work with. So that's kind of the concept of pushing decision-making and governance to the edges. If this circle and this circle can work together and solve a problem, they should do it. We shouldn't have a big community-wide conversation. We should trust that they're closest to the problem that know how to figure it out. And only when the circles overlap to a point where this is a really central problem that all communities are going to care about, that should be the equivalent of what we have as a circle today. Like, it's big enough that everybody wants to come together and talk about it, but we don't care about everything else. Like, let it happen in its different places and people can wander around and throw their voices around. But like, if we're going to decentralize, let's really decentralize and push those decisions out and not set anything up ahead of time and see what magic happens. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah, and I think this kind of structure would allow us to be unstructured because you would have, let's say, NFT bunch of people who are like doing something, but they still need to think about people, they need to think about processes, they need to think about technology, they need to think about what kind of products they have or services, and they need to think about marketing and selling their stuff, or at least speaking about it. So they will need to do those things anyways. So if we give names to those things and we give like starter kit, like, okay, here, go make your subcircle, then they can do that. And they are interoperable with everyone else in the community. And I had an example there previously that you could be a startup in Zambia, or you could be East Asian town hall folks, or you could be a project, community-led project in Norway, but it doesn't matter because you are structured in a same loose way, having the same terminology, and you can do whatever you want in whichever way you want, but you have something in common with everyone else. And by the way, it's not a coincidence that it made you think about Saturday's session, because I listened to the entire 3 hours and made that slide based on that. And yeah, so there's a good example of a proposal that you could have for Fund 9. Self-organized subcircles. You don't have to call it GPS, but if you want to have it in line with other proposals that are going to this direction, then we should talk. Then?
Yeah, so it's probably no secret that I'm really big fan of the direction generally that is coming out of this work for quite a while now. I've had the privilege of actually seeing the deck earlier as well. So it's it brings a lot of clarity and predictability to the process, where the current structure does bring about issues of being somewhat erratic, right? And in that kind of environment, it's very difficult to build sustainably because you don't know what you can actually rely upon. And it really brings in what Harris touched upon earlier, was that depth into it. It is not just like sprinkling water for 5 minutes in one part of the garden and then just moving to another one. And there's no really a clear path for those weeds or veggies or fruits to actually take root, because they don't get consistent watering, in that sense, and because we're just hopping from one place to another and there's no predictability. So in that sense, it speaks to me greatly because it also unifies the language somewhat. One of the biggest barriers that we have in Cayalyst is from people looking from outside in. They're extremely confused and they're always heavily overwhelmed at any given point. So when new people come in, it really takes weeks, sometimes even months, for them to actually orientate themselves and become comfortable enough to understand where their particular set of skills, domain expertise, or experience fits in and how they can start contributing. And I think the framework, when switching to a model like that will allow much greater clarity for those people coming in, which then talks about the fact that it would make much easier the whole outreach and onboarding process. Because now, not only that we are able to speak that common knowledge to outsiders, you know, quote unquote, they can become insiders much quicker, and they can start fulfilling the roles which are very much needed to support all these different structures, so that we can actually start having the collaboration, which is staying consistent. What I really like about the perspectives, you know, looking on those like big buckets, is that it really gives that longevity, long-term outlook into the where we had it, right? And then the objectives allow us to be flexible, where you can be flexible in the short to midterm navigation of those like immediate moves, right? Like, do we lean a little bit more to the left, more to the right? But essentially, we all have the main doors covered when it comes to addressing all of those different things in it. And at the end of the day, having a common language, as we've seen, is much more easier than to talk about the KPIs as well. How do we actually measure the outcome that's coming at the other side of the pipeline? Which today is extremely difficult, because not only it is always submitted individually by individual teams who all have different understanding of different topics, and there is no really unification or unified language that actually makes it everything come together much nicer, so that we can have a really good like zoom out overview of like what's happening within the Cayalyst. And, you know, for me, it speaks to the agility. And I think that's another big thing, because when you talked about all those different elements, like, you know, talking about education, talking about the governance, when you start decentralizing decisions where the information lives and the domain expertise is, you really start getting the solutions which are viable for the ecosystem. And as Nori says, if there's so many different circles, when two circles come together and they have a solution for the particular problem which is in their domain, they shouldn't be slowed down dramatically, because it's waiting on the rest of the ecosystem to catch up. And that almost echoes in a way how Cardano is also made, that you are able to separate different layers of the ecosystem and upgrade them eventually when the need arises and when the solution is ready to be made, without disruption of services in other pockets. And I think like going towards the model of what we're seeing here makes it much easier to identify where the domain knowledge is and who are the people that can plug into that, so they can start delivering the solutions that can actually improve the experience as a whole. And, you know, really keeping decisions where the knowledge is, and essentially making sure that we become robust. We talk about being anti-fragile. Well, that would be the very much definition of it, being able to decentralize decision making on different levels. Obviously, there would be different tiers, but it would make the whole ecosystem more agile, but also more transient over time and predictable for people coming from the outside in. So kudos to you.
All right, thanks. It doesn't blow me away anymore because you said it already once. First time you said it, I was like, wow, Danny the Great agrees. No, there was a good comment from Randall. I don't know why I always pick Randall, but maybe he just has great comments. We should meet. We should talk. He said that he's thinking of more ongoing fluid funding thing. And even if we decide one day to let go of funds, this kind of structure would allow that, because then you would just top up the budget of those different funding categories every 3 months, and they could do whatever they do, whatever would make sense in that reality. Ken.
Can you hear me? Okay. What I wanted to say goes along the lines of what Nori was saying. If you want to be able to build up the, like you want communities to build up from the ground up. And so like just with the research I've been doing about knowledge management, like if you're building up a shared idea space, so like you're collaborating on building up like a knowledge graph that shows up like where, not just what people know, but what ideas people have, what people are working on, then, and have a way for people to consolidate what they're doing and and condense it into like a shared perspective, then you have something of substance that isn't tied to like any individual person. Like you have something that's more foundational that people can collaborate on. Like if you make collaboration revolve around certain aspects of an idea space, then people who are thinking about the same thing will automatically end up in the same place. And so like if you're thinking about something like circle formation, just being in the same place in an idea graph would sort of build out that sort of circle. And you have, when you have, like if you're building up an idea graph or a knowledge base, you're connecting ideas together. And so the way that different circles would interact with each other could be associated with the connections between the different parts of the idea space that they're working on. So I'm just thinking about how, like, you could do something that starts the collaborative efforts at like the grassroots level. So you're not coming at it from a top-down perspective where this is our framework and we're trying to build these sub-circles out of this framework. Like it's good to have the ideas that are associated with, okay, this is what I think this sort of structure should look like. But if you flatten those ideas out, you put them into like a knowledge space, and then you have people iterate on that knowledge, and they can add their, like how they might think about things differently, and then bring up discussion about how to consolidate ideas. And even if you're trying to build up like a taxonomy of the different structures that you want to focus on, that can be more dynamic if you're starting at just the ideal level. So that's sort of the stuff I've been thinking about a lot recently, and
that's a ready proposal for Fund 9. Go for it. And remember that all this, what we're sharing, it's open source. You're free to steal it and build on it, remix, do whatever needs to be done. Yes, do that, and don't do it alone. Take people with you. If you want to coordinate with others, then involve us in a little coordination role or something. Cool. Vladimir.
Hi, everyone. I like, first of all, I like this. It sounds very good to me. I've been looking at the challenge setting proposals recently, and I see often the big picture is lost, like Cardano's mission, even the Fund 9 goals. Often challenges, as they're set up right now, do not specifically address the mission or the goals, but usually I sense like they address the concerns of a team that wishes to propose projects in a domain. And as they're set up right now, the funds are sort of an ad hoc process that veers unpredictably from fund to fund. So, I mean, I know from my own experience, I submitted several challenge setting proposals along the funds, and I think one of mine that was accepted in Fund 7, afterwards I thought it didn't merit it, and I still think the same. I think it didn't really overlap well with a mission, but that's why I think this proposed change to objectives is good, because objectives equate a vision, and challenges right now, they often reflect the concerns of the moment. And what happens is there is some kind of overcompensation for choices that were made in the previous fund. So if in one fund there were no funds allocated for one segment, then in the next fund the pendulum swings to the other extreme direction. And that's why I sort of like the idea of objective settings. But I would also add that the devil will be in the details of setting objectives properly. So I think it's a process that needs to be well organized so that we minimize overlapping. And my last comment is that I think maybe ranked voting would help to prevent some cutthroat competition between and among objectives, so that everybody can win, because everybody will feel like they're not voting for that one objective of their own that they really want to see, but they'll be able to voice the full range of their preference. Thanks.
Yeah, maybe it didn't shine through, but that was based on ranked voting, that you could upvote, whatever you
Okay.
want.
Maybe I didn't hear that part.
Yeah, you can do that in D-Work today. What you cannot do in D-Work is downvote. So boohoo. Harris.
Thanks.
Yeah, I'll probably need to drop here shortly, but this discussion is just amazing, and love all the participation and the ideas. I do think, that language is important, right? And supporting that. Cayalyst is really formed out of ideas, and we created the concept of a challenge and created this language of challenge teams and things like that. So if we do decide to shift names, I know there's some renaming going on. We have our proposer assessors now. So I do think it's important to kind of get people speaking a new language or the same language. It's helpful to cement that relatively quickly, and that way people understand and get what you're talking about. So totally open to rename a lot of these things. And I do like the objectives, and it certainly makes more sense from a business perspective, where my background is as well, for sure. So, I do think that in nature, there's things that are structured and there's things that are unstructured. You look at data sets, there's, people tried for decades to force things into nice little boxes with specific columns of data that fit nicely in specific areas. But in reality, just having open data sets is important. Give people that creativity to be able to make changes to how things are structured. So I think maybe there's a balance where we can create a hybrid structure, where it's, here's some specific categories, for lack of a better word, and then here's some unstructured things. And so maybe things that are aligned with the mission, right? We do have some things that are structured that we sort of think it's a good idea as a group, that we move forward as a consistent thing that we align to, but then leave that creativity open, to those unstructured groups that can come in with proposals and really help to expand. Like we, in a structured way, it would have been harder to sort of reach 91 different countries, but leaving it unstructured, leaving those problems to be set by the world, has really embraced and allowed this expansion, much faster, I think. We certainly have had a lot of thinking and align with what you folks are talking about in terms of speeding up the funds. We certainly think that decoupling funds is certainly a direction which would be great. We do need people, to have enough time to vote, to have enough time to consider. But definitely there's some great ideas there in terms of speeding it up, making sure that we have these things in place. Certainly love the idea of this knowledge graph and sort of grouping people together that way. And a lot of this can be based in data, can be based on, APIs that can be established and shared with different groups to sort of organize these things in different ways. And it's certainly something, definitely I support and want to try to support from IO's perspective to give tools, to the creators and people building these systems, to run with. So we certainly have some ideas. We'll be sharing certainly more around the corner here for sure. But I think this effort is tremendous. I think this discussion is amazing. And the idea is that self-organization is really what it's all about. And I definitely think that DREPs, they may start having a vested interest in terms of specific topics, and that may be a group to sort of blend in to this at some point. How would they sort of be positioned in this mix? What kind of influence, what kind of self-organization would be there? Is that just sort of part of these other circles? How is that organized? It's certainly something to consider. And one of the things that we've been missing is certainly the idea of proposals related to governance itself, or structure and processes, as you folks have outlined, which I think is great. So that if you did want to put in that proposal in Fund 9 to sort of organize, a structure or subcircle, that it has a home, that it has a place to go, where it's like, oh, okay, this is on structure and processes / governance that can help align the direction, instead of it ending up in a miscellaneous category or some other random category. So it's certainly helpful to have a framework to sort of enter that. And I think some kind of hybrid might be the right balance, where we can drive innovation, drive to the direction of Cardano, what it needs to support it, really build that developer support, really make sure that we're building processes to support Cayalyst itself, for sure, which is certainly an initiative which came from the community, which is awesome. And we definitely want to support in enacting and enabling those great ideas and making sure that it can happen, for sure. So really wonderful discussion. Thanks for the initiative, everyone here, and glad to be part of this with you.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I think we need to arrive at those correct terms pretty soon, and at least by the end of our proposal, which is end of August. So that's what we have promised. We have promised a framework, so it will be done. I would give a couple of more rounds of iteration and then get together with a smaller group of interested people who are language jerks, who think that language is important, language creates our reality, to really define what those are. And yeah, as you mentioned, objectives is more reachable, more approachable by business people. So it was intentional that we also make it more approachable for people outside of Cardano, because we have been playing inside of our little bubble, and now we have started taking steps outside. So it's more convincing when we go with the terminology that they can understand also. I had many other things, but Felix.
You can go on, Tomi. Love to listen to you. But yeah, I'm thinking on the whole thing, what life love to give a thought to. Actually, also, this is an improvement on the current process, what is presented with the category especially. And this is only possible because the community had the possibility to define their own challenges. Over almost 10 funding rounds now, we have over 100 challenges, which has been identified by the community. I think this is a superpower somehow. And in the category process, we would cut this off. And maybe to say, okay, when we make an evolution, how can we make sure that the best things we have discovered can be adapted to the new form then? To say, and another point also is to say, on one point, it's true, for projects, it's difficult to navigate through funding categories. On the other side, it has an extreme beautiful outcome. The projects who build on Cayalyst, by not being ensured which category, which challenges will be next funding round, they build extremely dynamic and flexible structures themselves, because they have to if they want to survive. So you force them somehow in a permanent self-refinement, self-experimentation, where you have a lot of innovation happening, because they have never time to get comfortable. In the categories, you would create a comfortable round, and you would somehow maybe block some innovation. So also there then to say, oh, okay, how could this then maybe work in? To say, and when setting something like, not to forget that this seems like a perfect solution, but a perfect solution to this moment right now. Once established, there will be a lot of shit happening, right? And you say, oh shit, we didn't thought about this, we didn't thought about this and whatnot. And keep this in mind as well, and know, hey, the whole environment is evolving all the time. Make sure that when we start things, we also know how to stop things. And before starting new things, make sure that we know beforehand already, how do we change something? Because when we expect from IHK parameter change,
And we say, hey, yeah, we want and this and that. And we should also start to define changes, parameter changes or processes for the setups we want to set up as community that we know before and already, oh, okay, this category might change maybe over the next 9 months. It has to be drastically refined or readapted. Who's making those changes? Who's deciding those changes then? And who stops the thing if something totally fucks up? But definitely love your idea since the beginning, George. Go all for it. Amazing work and amazing discussion.
Yeah, I wouldn't say this stops the innovation, because I think it gives more legitimacy to setting the objectives. And like you said, we have repository of 100 challenges that we can use as a basis to come up with really cool objectives. And then we can put those to the community and say, how do you rank these? What is important right now? So then 10, 15, 20 of those would be the focus for the next 3 months or 6 months or whatever. So I don't think it stops that. But yeah, we shouldn't make this an intellectual exercise that we discuss until eternity, but we should block by block, piece by piece, start building towards this and see what works. And like Nin says, it can start with one person being responsible for something, and how Ken said that we can then have more people swarm around something, whether it's UI design or whatever. So that's how it starts. Phil, Nin, I will come back to you, but Phil, did you want to comment on what Felix said?
Bits of what Felix said, and following on from what some of Harris has said and Chris said, we've had a chat about the concept of the order and the chaos and how each one has its benefits. And for instance, in the chaos comes the innovation. All this that we're working in is the result of the chaos of starting it in fund 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Things get ordered over time because that's what humans like to do. And as you develop the order, in some ways you lose the innovation, which is kind of what Felix was just mentioning as well. So it's important that as we lay down structures and order and create a more efficient and more effective space, that we also ensure that there is fertile ground for innovation and that space for the people that are not here, even that don't even know about this, but when they do find out, that they have a place to plant their ideas and grow them, and don't feel forced into some certain structures because that's what the people before them had. So I think it's just part of the game that we do need to play, is that we need efficiencies and we need to change things, and that's what we're here. But we also need to remember we're not trying to solve Cayalyst, because the Cayalyst is the thing that creates the mixture happening. So once we solve it, then there's no more Cayalyst. So we need to keep it open and free to be able to adjust and move with the times. So I like to always say to people that you're not trying to build the thing. You're not trying to solve the thing. You're trying to build a thing so that other people can follow, right? The problems that are here in this space, the problems that we all identify, we don't own those problems. We can own the solutions to that problem, but we don't own the problem. Someone else can solve the problem in a different way, because there's going to be individual ways, groups ways, communities, lots of different thinking. And just to keep in mind that as we do develop these things, we do want to also allow others to also develop and build. So that's what I'd say about this. I do love the work you guys are doing, George, Nadia, Tomi. It's super important, and it's like, I like to think that as we go, the right things happening at the right time. So we entered a bit of a space after Fund 6 that seems to be changing and adjusting things. So now we need to enter this space where we're going to sort of sort things out a little bit more and get clear on what we're all here to do, so that we can progress to the next level. But just in the back of the mind, it needs to be, we need to keep that open for others, that path. Thank you.
Yeah, Phil and I are actually in the same MISC challenge team from Fund 7, and we understand the importance of miscellaneous. And what I like about this model is that miscellaneous is everywhere. So it can be very simple in the beginning, like just asking the proposal that what is the main focus of your proposal? Is it people or technology or structure or marketing or this and that? So then that is enough, and then they don't need to be strapped by the objectives themselves, but they can say, I don't really care about any of these objectives at the moment. I want to be MISC, but still it's part of it.
I've been listening to Ika Tolle recently, and he says that names are just the signposts. Don't worry about what they're called. They're just like direction pointers. They're not the thing. So I think if we can keep that sort of concept in the idea that says, yeah, okay, you're working within people, but whatever that means, that's sort of the thing, whatever you want to make it mean, kind of thing. So
he has the ability of bringing us back to reality. Like I used to read Power of Now on a Croatian beach when it's like plus 40, and I would take a page and it would talk about transience of everything, and the glue actually went off because it was so hot. And I would just like rip the pages out when I was reading. All right. Nin, one more comment, and then we go to the part 3, which is about collaboration when it comes to proposing things together.
Awesome, thank you. So here's my understanding of this. I think there's a balance between innovation and implementing something pragmatically. So for example, for us, even though we have a pretty decent engineering team, building everything in Haskell and Plutus would be, although very innovative and extremely desirable because of its security, high assurance, and so on, it's not possible, right? So we have to be a little bit more pragmatic and focus on delivering our product on deadline. And that's what I think of, like an objective. A little bit more smart, time-bound, achievable, measurable objective versus like a challenge, right? Once objectives become too big, right, they naturally become challenges. So, from my understanding, this is just balancing, okay, our pure focus on innovation, on moonshots, which honestly I love about Cayalyst, but as well as the frustration and lack of collaboration to deliver real products in the near term, because we need both, right? We need real products now to be able to empower the whole community and the projects that are moonshot to get that faster, right? No one gets there by themselves, not even us. There's two things I want to point out. I do really like the subcircles. I think that's kind of like a natural extension of challenge teams even. I would like to keep that permissionless. Anyone can join and participate, because like Felix said, creating and proposing challenges right now, or even objectives, that is a superpower that anyone within the community can have. And to take it away, I think that would be a huge loss, right? But there's where there are big challenges, there's also big opportunities to do it well. So the devil will be in the details. Second is MISC, right? I like what Harry said about hybrid system, that it still will allow for innovation, although we do want to focus on achievables and and achieving real things sooner and collaborate on them. And last is, a little challenge for the team: who is going to fund these subcircles, right? Because even currently, the circle is facing funding challenges. Thank you.
I'd like to address that who would fund it. I hope to see, in my dream for Cayalyst is that it spawns side treasuries. So, and part of what I like about what this does is that it can support that concept, so that groups of people who have a structure in place that can handle it, because you can't just provide money and say, go work it out. And people are working on it. People like Nadia, people like the Swarm are working on this sub-circle idea, side treasury idea, and how they could operate funding mechanisms outside of the formal default system that's currently built. And I hope that can lead to the funding of their own subcircles from that side treasury, as well as the mechanisms in place to manage, essentially. I mean, you can call them DAOs if you want, but essentially these subgroups of the community can be responsible for managing a treasury, applying for more funds to work on a set of goals, and also provide their own representation from those funds. So I think there's solutions out there. The current structures don't quite fulfill that, but I think we can move towards more inclusive and better funding mechanisms.
Yeah, and I think that brings back brings us back to Nin's point and Felix's point that this is not taking away challenge setting from people. This is replacing challenge setting with objective setting, which means that they already have funding in those categories. They just need to decide what to focus on, and then they can voice out their opinion that we should focus on this, we should focus on that. And then whatever you want to call them, subcircles or something else, they can help these people to reword them or to make them more ready to be uniform, to be mutually comparable, to be better objective statements or whatever. Okay, let's get into part 3, and I have good news for you. It's only 2 slides, I think, or 3. Anyway, so the next steps, we are right now here. We are educating and inspiring different people to join, so welcome. We are understanding the 5 perspectives together, and who knows, maybe the community says that no, it should be 4 or it should be 6 or whatever, and maybe you say that this and that should be reworded and whatnot. All that is fine. I think it's all welcome. Once this is done, we need to fix the identity, the purpose, dream, and values. And I'm not sure if it happens before or after August. We have not prepared to deliver this as part of this proposal, but we can give you examples of what this could be, and we can get you started. But if you want us to facilitate that, then probably it would have to happen in Fund 9. Deciding the strategic themes and aligning those with IOG after the dream is set. Then redesigning the challenge setting into objectives and metrics, redesigning roles and incentives for participation, looking at what these representatives, stewards, champions, or whatever we want to call them could be. What does this mean for challenge teams, for example, going forward? Then we can now talk about drafting common proposals to meet the objectives. And there's a note here that we don't need to have the whole framework ready, but we can start from one corner of it, and we can start from tiny initiatives, or we can start from big strategies, and these will meet halfway. That's how it's designed. So the floor is yours. What would you like to work on? Based on what you have heard today, what you have said today, what are the things that come to mind that could be aligned with this kind of direction?
Hi.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
Okay. So I would like to know, because I'm talking to a group about DAO formation, and I like to come here and to hear your perspectives of governance, especially I see it's not, you know, the type of thinkers maybe are more like people into technical issues and things like that. And I as a researcher in technology and society, I've been like looking into different things like ethics and technology and how the way we build things impact, even our relationships, with each other, like intersubjective communication and all of that. And what I like about Cardano is because it's open space and I see people with very good thoughts and good speech, and I would like to know, because now I'm thinking about if I present a proposal, maybe I should present a proposal of more like intellectual as a researcher, like what I could bring to this environment as thinking how this space we are building with Web3 and cryptocurrencies and DeFi and all these terms we are using as self-sovereignty and decentralized identity. And we always say, oh, this is for the good for the world because we want a world more decentralized. Because what is about decentralization is about, we have always abuse of authority. So, and this creates a lot of injustice and problems in society. So I'm Brazilian, so I can talk here an hour about big problems in society, especially violence against women. So and I don't think it's a coincidence that we don't have many women in this space raising the voice intellectually with with thoughts about what we should do to make things better. So I'd like to know how this community would be open, and maybe if I could join any team that already have a proposal, or if I could present something alone as research about how Cardano community is moving around with the governance and how we can apply like ethical concerns within this space, and how we could even make the community reflect, even all this crypto community reflect inside Cardano about the certain issues that might be increasing some flaws. So this is the thoughts I would like to bring on, because I'm still thinking if I can rethink about a project that I could present, because the projects I have with other people, I think I think there is something that need to be developed and fixed before these projects, to be working well. Thank you.
Thanks. Is there anyone else who has been thinking about ethical governance and research on this?
It might be related. I was going to raise my hand just to say that the topics around subcircles and the decentralization of governance is a really big passion area of mine. And really talking about some of the same, like throwing on the words that Ellen was using, like sovereignty and decentralization, and how do we push decision-making and agency as far out to the edges as possible. Because as we scale, any kind of centralized decision-making or things like that are going to start to fail. They're going to break down. There's going to be squabbles. There's going to be cultural differences. We should be looking at mechanisms and structures where we can grow rapidly. Decisions are always made at that leading edge that's growing outwards. And we come together at the right times to make decisions with the right people and let that be organic. Definitely need a lot of technology and communication systems that we don't have today to make that work. But I think it's worth doing. So that's kind of where my passions lie. And anybody who wants to work on that or how subcircles can form, I'm super interested in being part of that conversation and helping out.
Ellen, would you like to join that?
Yes, the sovereignty, yes, and the centralization, this is very important. Thank you.
I think you have a couple things in the chat here, Tommy, too.
Yeah, I'm not looking at the chat, so just bring up what's there.
Okay. Niels has digital assisted governance.
Yeah, I'm setting up Social Design Academy. The human space governance we're talking about a lot in Catalyst. In my perception, because I focus on distributed software design, can't scale. It simply can't scale. So we need new ways of digital governance design that supports us in speeding up our decision making. In that regard, I look at decentralization as less centralized, and we need distributed decision making to find new options for humanity. And the two of the things I'm developing is a new front-end approach for blockchain. I'm developing a new UX system, a social UX, because we need some sort of universal design language within our communities, because you can't expect, if you remove hierarchy, that we simply can work together in an orderly fashion. So there's work done there. And we have like humanity has three main problems. One is the last 200-300 years we didn't organize in new ways, and we can only know and design what we can see in our real world. So that's not going to change anytime soon. The other one is that we are all psychopaths, social psychopaths. We group in color, in language, in whatever dimension. And the third one is that we often look inwards instead of outwards. And by naming it Catalyst GPS, you kind of look inwards. And I think that a future governance model needs to connect with the real world. And it needs to work on location and time. It needs to be playful and open. And by using an inwards focus, you create this metaverse because you disconnect the real and the virtual world. So these are thoughts that came to mind. I kept me from speaking too early, but I hope that adds some value.
Yeah, we tried to balance with the internal and external. So the first couple of perspectives when it comes to people and structure and processes, that's more the internal focus, and then the marketing or the impact and outreach, that's definitely external, and the products and services and the blockchain, the technology part, those are somewhere in between.
Yeah, but they all go through the lens of Catalyst and not so much through the lens of real world problems, for example. What I mean with an outwards perspective is that you take a real problem from the real world, pull it into Catalyst, and then see how you can define your objectives, for example.
Yeah, maybe it doesn't shine through enough. And this is what Sean already pointed out before, that we were lacking some impact measurement and SDG tracking and this kind of parts here. So definitely like we would welcome your ideas to make this even more relevant in society.
How can where does this group meet? Is there a place?
The group doesn't exist yet. You can start it.
Oh. Cool.
Yeah, Tommy.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm taking notes, so I don't see hands. So just.
Okay. I have in a couple of different areas, the CTs and now the PAs, I have put in suggestions and both in D work early on about the need for code of ethics for the different groups. And I was thinking in my spare time, I may put in a small proposal going forward on writing code of ethics for each position within Cayalyst. So it has an interest in me, especially in decentralization, that if there is a roadmap of what the ethics should be, it somewhat holds everybody's feet, so to speak, to the fire if they have a measurement of morality in there. One of the best books in sci-fi that I read as a young man had two rules on this planet. One was don't offend your neighbor, and the second rule was don't be offended too easily. And I thought that was a great way to rule a planet. So ethics, I think, should be along the same line, fairly simple and straightforward. So I'd be interested in working on something like that.
And this sounds a bit like what Ellen was mentioning. So maybe
Correct.
collaborate.
Tomi, I'm interested to know what your thoughts are about this group and whatever expansion of this group meeting, discussing things in the future. What did you have something in mind for that, or?
Is Ondra on the call?
I don't think he's here.
Okay, so Ondra had this idea that anyone could become a GPS branded facilitator or whatever, that we would have some sort of way to quickly spread the whole idea of this framework by allowing people materials and understanding and all that to go out there and just start doing things. How that's going to happen, I have no idea. But we're working on it.
Is there a way that the GPS can support proposers to write proposals in a certain format, like to start thinking about proposing under these pillars and things like that? So inside the details, has that been considered? That
now it is.
Okay. Cool.
Hey Tomi, it's Sean. Would it be possible to include citizen science? Could fit in many places, but digital assisted governments, like, connecting with the real world, that is citizen science.
Yeah.
Like getting people out there collecting real tangible data, not about the metaverse, but about the world around us, which all humans are destined to live. It also ties into outreach and impact. And I think we're going to see a lot more citizen science proposals. I'm part of another working group. It's just a bunch of academics and others interested in open science, and we're helping guide open science principles into UNESCO and help guide and shape their principles. But I have Cayalyst on that to show where I got my funding from. And they find that amazing that tokenomic models have disrupted science funding.
Sorry, did you say citizen science and open data or open?
Open science, yeah. So some citizen science is not necessarily open, but open science is another, umbrella term within science.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Part of my questioning is how are we going to follow this up, because I need to step off in a second. So
yeah, so I think there is a real need to kind of finalize the framework at some point. So if there are people who are interested in that, maybe you can step into our Discord. It's in the Cayalyst United. There is discussion for GPS separately there, or just connect with Nadia or me and we'll take it from there. We welcome people to become very active collaborators in this, because we can't do this just the three of us, because this is huge. So we definitely need your help. Nadia, did you have some thoughts about this?
Yeah, sorry, I'm just chatting away there. We have the GPS D-Workspace. We can certainly use that and have projects together there. That would give us a place to have conversations all together, which is would be an interim option. And I can provide that link directly. I just gave you I think everyone here I'm connected to in Discord, so you can just DM me and I'll put it through. But maybe a good idea, Tomi, is we'll come away from this and connect with those who have put something on the board initially and say, you know, how do you want to take this forward? Have that beginning conversation so that we can think about how that wants to naturally organize. And then maybe we give it a couple weeks and come back together in an after town hall like this and think about how we might get a broader reach than just this space. But I think maybe a follow-up conversation could be good. Last thing I'll add is Chris had suggested in the chat earlier that maybe we let this document be a little bit receiving of comments, so people who are in this conversation could contribute ideas as far as language and feedback. So another idea there that we let contributions happen asynchronously to this document. And then I guess we could also just make a channel for just general GPS discussion if we want to do that.
Yeah, I think you shared the link because I see a lot of anonymous puppies and hippos here. So everyone has editing rights.
Okay. Yeah, I shared it in this room, but we could do it more broadly.
And yeah, so another way of going forward together is basically, I had it here. So if there's someone who is into this identity stuff, purpose-driven values, we would love to collaborate with you. Strategic themes, we need to collaborate with you, and we need to collaborate with IOG. Then if there's people interested in objective setting and challenge theme redesign, you can take that up. If you're into facilitating this kind of stuff for others, we could talk about that. If you want to build software to manage all this, like Ken mentioned, definitely go for that. If you want to increase the global reach, if you want to work on the functional teams, as we already mentioned here, that there was someone interested in outreach and impact, for example. So it's all yours. You can start going to those directions, and if you connect with us, we can make sure that we coordinate with you to make sure that you are in touch with everyone else who thinks the same way. There you go. And of course, it's decentralized, so it's not easy, it's not clean, it's messy, but that's why we're here. So this was kind of giving you the tools to take this forward, and I would encourage people to join the Cayalyst United server and find GPS discussion there. So maybe we can continue the discussions there, and then, as Nadia said, in a couple of weeks we can come back together.
I just put the direct link to the general GPS chat in there, so you guys can just hop in there if you want. And if you have trouble with it, just DM me and I will put you in there.
Yeah, right now I don't think we want to push this any longer because we've been here for 2.5 hours, I think.
Agree.
But thanks everyone. I shall stop the recording so we can really say what we think. Okay. Good night, everyone.